Well, all three US indices were in the green yesterday. In fact, there's a good set of positivity coming through across the board, across global indices as well. When I'm looking at all three US indices, a good set of gains through this week, as well as when I'm looking at the last 4 to 5 days, right? The Nasdaq has been in the green for 4 out of the 5 days, last 5 trading sessions when I'm looking at it. The Dow and the S&P 500 too have been higher in 3 out of the last 4 trading sessions. So definitely some amount of positivity coming across the board, especially after that fall that we saw in mid of June. We've seen a good recovery coming through. It seems like the bulls are somewhere taking over. When I'm looking at the Dow, up around a 1/7% in trade yesterday, 15 bips higher. The S&P 500 a good solid 3/5% higher, 0.6% up in trade yesterday, and the Nasdaq a good 1.6% higher. So clearly good set of flows coming through for all these three indices. When I'm looking at Europe though, slightly soft is where Europe is the way I can describe it. Around the DAX was down around 1/5% in trade. The FTSE down 2/5%. Of course, politically there is some amount of churn happening in the UK, and that's where eyes will lie going forward as well. And the stock 600 also down around 1/5% in trade. In terms of major earnings, right, Tesla declared its Q2 calendar year 2022 earnings, and it was a beat on most counts outside of the margins. So of course revenue has gotten better, and even the profit has gotten way better than expected. In fact, analysts expected earnings per share of around $1.83. It came in at $2.2. So clearly some amount of tailwind even in terms of earnings, and Tesla seeing that. But margins came off. They were at 33%, have come down to around 29%. So there is some margin pressure coming through for Tesla. Also, one important piece of the pie is the Bitcoin that Tesla holds, and cryptos in general, which Tesla tends to take payments in. What's seen in the financials is they've cut down on 75% of their crypto holdings. So some amount of pressure may come through there as well, or has already translated as there as well, but mysteriously they've cut down on 75% of their crypto holdings. That's on the earnings side. When I'm looking at the futures, the Dow, S&P as well as the Nasdaq futures currently sitting in the red, so keep your eyes out on that one. The clocked gains, but they've reversed some of those gains, especially on the futures, is what it's indicating. So clearly lower on the futures side. When I'm looking at Asia, right, and how Asia has opened today morning, it's a soft start for Asian indices. When I'm looking at the Nikkei, in fact, it's down around 1/10%, so trading broadly flat with a negative bias. The Shanghai is down around 0.5%. The Hang Seng is down over 1%, just over 1%. The ASX 200 absolutely flat, and the Kospi is probably the only index holding on to some amount of gains, up around 0.4% as we speak. The SGX NIFTY too is up around 1/5%, so indicating a mild positive start is where the SGX NIFTY is at. But across the board in Asia, it's largely flat. And that's on the global indices. When I'm moving on to commodities, well, oil prices came slightly lower. In fact, when I'm looking at oil at the moment, it's currently at around $102 a barrel, with Brent at around $106 a barrel. So it's come off those $107 where Brent was at least yesterday. So it's come off that, largely on the fear of supply or fear of demand concerns picking up. Of course, US demand will continue to remain under pressure as inflation keeps creeping up, and of course oil prices is a contributor to that. Moving quickly on to gold though, bad news for gold investors. It's come off below that $1,700 an ounce mark. So clearly shifting lower is where gold currently stands, and that negative trend is continuing, and that's obviously on the back of the dollar index continuing to gain a little bit. So we've seen the dollar index again creep up towards that 107 mark. I did mention yesterday the dollar index came below the 106.5 mark, and it's crept up now around 0.5% or so towards that 107 mark. And that means that there'll be pressure on gold, and that's exactly what we're seeing. It's below that $1,700 an ounce mark. When I'm looking at bond yields, well, the US 10-year bond yield holding above that 3% mark, so that story at play is intact. Of course, all eyes on the Fed going forward, as the FOMC meeting will happen later this month, and what the policy rates will be going forward will bring some clarity on that particular point, and eyes will be on that. Moving quickly on to cryptos, we did talk about how Tesla has cut 75% of its crypto holdings overall. So focus will be on cryptos, but cryptos gained. In fact, Bitcoin breached that $24,000 mark, and of course it's come off that now. So we're looking at $23,000 and change is what Bitcoin is at the moment, and that's broadly the trajectory which crypto is taking. It went higher, it's come off a little bit since then. That's broadly how global markets, commodities, crypto is doing. Of course, we are expecting a mildly positive start for India, reiterating that.